I sang in my chains, a memoir. By myself, Marilyn Thomas, I'm reading chapter 9. This is a chapter about my first morning in the convent. I was 14 years old. The first morning in the convent, and every morning thereafter, the bell rang at 4:55. It was so loud no one could possibly sleep through it. We all bolted to our feet instantly because it was the rule, and there was always the superior who made her rounds, her hands in her sleeves, her eyes focused on each bed in turn as she strode through the dorm rooms to make sure we were up and getting dressed. Not to rise at the first sound of the alarm was considered a fault, a matter for confession and public penance. We had 25 minutes to dress. By 5:20, we were all required to be on our knees in the community room. The silence of the night was broken only to recite the morning offering, a prayer in which we dedicated to God every moment of the coming day. I'm going to skip a few pages. I discovered that first morning that I was the slowest eater in the refectory. Fine, I would do what I did at home, eat less than the others. I took the cereal, then the milk. I even took an orange because I loved fruit. But when those buns came along with the homemade butter from the convent farm, I passed the plate without taking any. Sister Adolpha tapped her glass with her spoon. Everyone looked up. She was glaring at me. "In the convent," she hissed, "we eat something of everything that is served." I put a bun on my plate with a pat of butter. Realizing how much I had to eat, I downed the cereal as fast as I could and started on the orange, peeling it with my fingers. She tapped on her glass again. "We use our knives here." I picked up the knife and applied it to the peel. The blade slid over the surface and hit the plate. She cringed and shook her head. "For heaven's sake, Peggy," she grunted, "show her how to eat an orange." Peggy, who sat next to me, took my orange, quartered it with her knife, and put it back on my plate in 4 equal sections. By now my stomach was in a knot, but I pushed the sections down my throat, scarcely chewing. Precisely 20 minutes after the bell had rung to begin the meal, the bell for dishwashing sounded. Seeing that I was still struggling with my bun, Sister Adolpha motioned for me to take my plate and move to the end of the table. I could feel the temperature of the room rising because every time she had to send me a message, her face grew redder. Breaking the rule of silence was serious business even for her. I sat at the end of the table trying to wash down chunks of bread with gulps of water while the other girls rushed around like bees in a hive doing dishes at the table. The whole operation was precisely orchestrated and conducted sitting down. Everyone had an assigned task. When the initial bell rang, 2 girls from each table walked to the serving kitchen where metal dishpans had already been filled with sudsy hot water and placed on stainless steel trays equipped with dish mops and towels. These trays were carried to the tables, a tray being put down in front of every 3rd person at the table. 1 washed, 1 dried, and 1 reset the table. When the dishes were done, the same few who had delivered the trays to the tables removed them. When the tables were completely reset for the next meal, the bell rang for the prayer of thanksgiving after meals. Everyone filed out of the refectory. I continued to sit at the table, trying to choke down the rest of my dry bun without water, since I had no water left. The crust was so thick, hard, and dry that it simply would not go down my throat. Sister Adolpha stood over me, her hands in her sleeves, her eyes on me. "Such foolishness will not be tolerated here." She spat out the words. "In the future, you will finish your meals with the rest of the group. Do you understand?" It was an order rather than a question. This, I knew, was no time to try to explain. I nodded, hoping that a contrite attitude would get her to stop staring at me with that bug-eyed expression of hers. "For your penance," she continued, "you will get on your knees in front of the crucifix here and recite 5 Our Fathers and 5 Hail Marys, and do it with outstretched arms." She demonstrated by extending her arms out from her sides. "When you're finished, get a move on because the bus is not going to wait for you." It was Dad again, only worse. By the time I was finished with both the bun and the penance recited on my knees in front of the crucifix, my legs felt weak as jelly as I ran up the 10 flights of stairs to get my books for school. I had 5 minutes to catch the bus. I'm going to skip a few pages. Here's the conclusion of that chapter. Given my dilemma, I had no shower shoes, I decided it would be better to risk taking a bath that evening in someone else's tub than to take a shower and get athlete's foot. Besides, one of the bathtub stalls was empty. I thought that if I hurried, I could be in and out before any of the other girls whose name was on the door would show up. Unfortunately, I was wrong. Doreen came to take her bath only to find that the stall was already occupied and not by anyone whose name was on the door, so she tattled. A loud rap on the door shattered the silence. "Who's in there?" I recognized the voice of Sister Adolpha. "Marilyn," I mumbled. "Come out this instant," she shouted. I was still dripping wet, a towel scarcely covering my middle as I stepped into the main room. "Do you know how to read?" She pointed to the list on the door. "Yes, sister." "Then why were you in there?" She pointed at the tub. "I don't have shower shoes." "I suppose you didn't notice that item on the list." Her tone was thick with sarcasm. "Yes, sister, I did, but my mom didn't know why I would need shower shoes," I said. She shook her head. "So it's your mommy's fault now, is it? Why don't you just pack your things and go home? This isn't a nursery. You ask for shower shoes in your next letter home. You ask your mother to mail them as soon as possible." I got them 2 Sundays later.